The town of Glenwood was quiet. Too quiet for those who still remembered its golden days. Once a lively village, bustling with families and laughter, it now stood in eerie silence, the only sounds that of rustling leaves and the distant hoot of an owl. The streets, once lined with vibrant shops and welcoming homes, were now plagued by boarded-up windows, and the few houses left had seen better days. One of those houses was the Hargrove residence. Nestled on the outskirts of Glenwood, the large Victorian-style house sat on a piece of land that many had long forgotten about. The once pristine white paint had faded to a sickly yellow, and ivy had begun to creep up the walls, obscuring the faded windows. Yet despite its neglected appearance, the house was still standing, a relic of a time when families filled the halls with laughter. That was until the Hargrove family moved in. Samantha Hargrove stood on the porch, staring out at the overgrown backyard that stretched beyond the house. Her husband, Daniel, was inside, unpacking boxes in their new home, while their two children, Lily and Jake, were already exploring the yard, their voices echoing faintly through the trees. The first few days had been full of excitement and curiosity. Despite the house's unsettling look, the Hargroves were hopeful about starting anew. They had moved here for a fresh start, a new chapter after Daniel's work transfer, away from the hustle and bustle of the city. But Samantha, ever the skeptic, couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't quite right about this place. She had heard the whispers, the stories of how this old house had been abandoned for decades, the rumors that it was cursed. But those were just stories, right? Turning her attention back to the yard, Samantha's gaze caught something unusual. It was barely visible through the thick trees, but she could make out the outline of something dark and ancient, something that didn't belong. Curiosity got the best of her. She stepped off the porch and walked toward the mysterious shape. The grass beneath her feet was damp, and the air felt unnaturally still as she approached. At first, it seemed like just another forgotten part of the property, but as she got closer, her heart began to race. There, in the center of the yard, was a well old and covered in moss, with crumbling stone walls that seemed to pulse with a strange energy. It had been hidden beneath the thick undergrowth, unnoticed by anyone until now. The well stood tall, as though waiting for someone to acknowledge its presence. But that was not the only thing that struck Samantha as odd. It was the strange glow emanating from within, faint but unmistakable, as though the well was alive in some way she couldn't explain. She hesitated, unsure of what to do next. Her first instinct was to turn back, to return to the safety of the house and forget she had ever seen it. But something in her, something primal, pushed her forward. She had to know more. Before she could approach any closer, she heard a rustling sound from behind her. Spinning around, she found her daughter, Lily, standing at the edge of the yard, watching her with wide eyes. "Mom," Lily called, her voice trembling with excitement and fear. "There's something in the well. I saw it." Samantha's heart skipped a beat. She had expected to hear nothing but silence. "What do you mean, sweetie?" Samantha asked, trying to mask the growing unease in her voice. Lily pointed toward the well, her small finger trembling. "I saw it, Mom. It was glowing. It whispered to me. It wants something." Samantha frowned, not sure whether to dismiss her daughter's words as childish imagination or to listen to the chill creeping up her spine. But Lily's pale face, the terror in her eyes, told her otherwise. Something was wrong with this well. Just then, Daniel appeared, walking up behind them with Jake in tow. "What's going on?" he asked, his voice filled with concern as he noticed the tension in the air. Samantha glanced at him, unsure of how to explain. "There's something about that well," she said quietly. "I don't know what it is, but it doesn't feel right." Daniel chuckled. a light-hearted sound that did little to ease the unease in Samantha's chest. "It's just a well, Sam. I'm sure it's harmless. Probably just an old relic left behind by the previous owners." But even as he said the words, he seemed unsettled, his gaze flicking toward the well as though something deep inside him knew that it wasn't just an ordinary well. Samantha watched as Lily took a step back, her wide eyes never leaving the well. "It called to me," Lily whispered, her voice barely audible. "It wants to make a wish come true. But there's a price." At that, a cold shiver ran down Samantha's spine. Her daughter's words were like a warning, and she couldn't ignore the creeping suspicion that the well was not a simple relic of the past. It was something far darker. "I'm going to call the realtor," Samantha said, her voice shaking slightly as she turned to leave. "We need to get this checked out." But as she took a step back toward the house, something strange happened. The ground beneath her feet seemed to tremble, and the air grew thick with tension. She turned around quickly, her eyes locking on the well. The glow had intensified, and then, as though it had been waiting for her to notice, the well began to move. Slowly at first, but then faster. Its stones shifting, creaking, as though it were coming to life. The air seemed to hum with a strange energy, and Samantha could hear a low, mournful whisper carried on the wind. Her heart pounded in her chest, and for the first time since they'd arrived in Glenwood, she felt a deep, suffocating fear. This wasn't just a well. It was something far more dangerous, and if they weren't careful, they might become its next victims. "Sam," Daniel said, his voice low and tense, "we need to get away from here. Now." But it was too late. As the wind picked up, the whispers grew louder, and the ground beneath their feet seemed to tremble more violently. The well's glow intensified until it was blinding, casting long, twisted shadows over the yard. And then, as if in response to some unseen command, a voice, deep and ancient, echoed through the air, sending a wave of terror through Samantha's body. "Your wish will be granted." The air hung heavy with an unnatural chill, the kind that made the hairs on the back of Samantha's neck stand up. For a brief moment, everything seemed to stop. The wind, the whispers, even the glow from the well. It was as though the world itself held its breath. Samantha's heart raced, her pulse pounding in her ears. The words, the promise of a wish granted, echoed in her mind, taunting her. But she knew better than to believe them. This wasn't a gift. It was a trap. "Sam," Daniel's voice broke through the oppressive silence. His hand grabbed her arm, pulling her away from the well. "We need to get inside. This place is wrong." Samantha didn't argue. Her gaze never left the well as she stumbled backward, feeling the weight of its ominous presence. She wanted to run, to escape, but her feet felt glued to the ground. It was as if something was holding her there, something she couldn't see but could definitely feel. Suddenly, a strange sensation washed over her, as though 1,000 eyes were watching her from the darkness beyond the trees. She shivered involuntarily and pulled her children close to her. Jake had clung to Daniel's side, his small hand gripping his father's with a strength that didn't match his size. Lily, on the other hand, stood frozen, her eyes wide with terror as she stared at the well. "It spoke to me," Lily whispered, her voice trembling. "It said it would grant a wish." Samantha knelt down to her daughter's level, trying to hold back the wave of fear threatening to overwhelm her. "What did it say, sweetheart?" she asked softly. Lily's lips trembled as she looked at her mother, fear and confusion in her eyes. "It said, 'Your wish will be granted,' but it wasn't like any wish I've ever heard of. It was dark, like it wanted something from us in return." The words sent a cold shiver through Samantha's spine. She had no idea what her daughter had truly seen or heard, but deep down, She knew that Lily was right. There was something wrong about that well, something ancient and twisted that none of them could possibly understand. "We need to leave," Daniel repeated, his voice stern and unwavering. He placed his arm around Samantha's shoulders, steering her back toward the house. "We'll go back to the town, talk to someone. There has to be an explanation for all of this." But as they turned to walk back to the house, a voice, soft but unmistakable, rang out from the well. "Do not turn away from me." The voice was deep, guttural, almost a growl. It was as if the well itself was alive, speaking with a life of its own. Samantha's heart stopped. She turned, unwillingly, unable to help herself. The glow from the well had intensified, pulsating in rhythm with her racing heartbeat. The ancient stones seemed to shift, groaning and creaking, as though the very foundation of the earth was cracking beneath them. "What do you want?" Samantha's voice trembled, despite her best efforts to sound strong. She could feel Daniel's hand tightening on her arm, pulling her away, but she couldn't tear her eyes away from the well. It was as if it was calling to her, pulling her in with an irresistible force. "You have wished," the voice continued, its tone growing darker, more insistent, "and I shall grant it. But be warned, for every wish comes at a price." Samantha's stomach turned. "A price? What kind of price?" "Mom," Lily whispered, her voice shaky. I don't think we should make any wishes. Not with that thing." But before Samantha could respond, the voice spoke again, louder this time. "You have already chosen. The wish will be granted." A cold wind swept through the yard, carrying with it a haunting whisper that seemed to echo through the trees. It was as though the very ground beneath them was alive, listening, waiting. Samantha's mind raced, her pulse quickening as the weight of the situation settled over her like a suffocating blanket. "How do we stop it?" she whispered, looking at Daniel. His face had gone pale, his jaw clenched as if trying to hold back a scream. But before he could answer, something unexpected happened. The well began to rumble. It was a low, guttural sound that seemed to vibrate in the very air, shaking the ground beneath their feet. The stones around the well cracked, pieces falling into the dark void below. The eerie glow intensified, flashing with blinding brilliance before dimming again. And then, for just a moment, everything went silent. But that silence was short-lived. The ground beneath their feet seemed to tremble violently, sending them stumbling backward. Samantha fell to her knees, her heart racing as the world around her seemed to warp and twist. It felt as though the well was pulling at the very fabric of reality itself, bending time and space. And then, as if summoned by the well's terrible power, a figure emerged from the darkness. It was vague at first, a shadow, but slowly it began to take shape. A woman, draped in tattered, ancient clothing. Her face was pale, almost ghostly, her eyes hollow, as if they had not seen the light of day in centuries. Her long, dark hair hung in ragged strands around her face, and her movements were jerky, unnatural, as though she were being controlled by some unseen force. Samantha's breath caught in her throat. This was no ordinary spirit. This was something darker, something far more malevolent. The figure glided toward them, her steps eerily silent, her eyes fixed on Lily. Samantha stood, her heart pounding in her chest. She wanted to scream, to run, but her body wouldn't obey. "Lily!" Samantha cried, reaching for her daughter, but it was too late. The figure was already there, standing inches from Lily, its cold, ghostly hand outstretched. Lily's face turned ashen, her eyes wide with fear. She backed away, but the figure moved faster, its bony fingers brushing her cheek. And in that moment, Samantha felt something cold, a deep, bone-chilling cold settle over her, as though the very life force in her veins was being drained away. "Please, no," Samantha screamed, but her voice was drowned out by the roar of the wind. The air was thick with the scent of decay, and the figure's lips parted to reveal a grotesque smile. Her teeth were sharp, elongated, like those of a predator. "You should have never wished," the figure hissed, its voice a screech that reverberated through the yard. "Now the price will be paid." And with that, the ground beneath them cracked open, and the figure vanished into the darkness, taking Lily with it. Samantha's scream echoed in the night as she fell to her knees, her heart pounding in her chest. The air around her seemed to freeze, the wind stilled, and everything fell into an unnerving silence. For a brief moment, she thought she had imagined it, the figure, the cold touch, the words. But as her eyes darted around the yard, she realized with horror that Lily was gone. Her breath caught in her throat. Her daughter was gone. "Lily!" Samantha cried out again, but her voice felt hollow, swallowed by the night. Her limbs were frozen, her body refusing to move as she stared at the spot where Lily had been just moments ago. The ground lay still, the grass undisturbed. No trace of the child. No sign of the malevolent figure that had taken her. Daniel was at her side now, his hand gripping her arm tightly. His face was ashen, his eyes wide with disbelief. "What the hell happened? Where is she?" His voice was barely a whisper, as if afraid that speaking too loudly might shatter the fragile reality they were in. "I don't know," Samantha gasped, shaking her head. "She was right here." And then the well, Daniel cut in, his eyes shifting toward the dark, glowing pit in the center of the yard. The wind had begun to stir again, but it wasn't the same. This time, it felt heavier, more oppressive, as if the air itself was pushing against them. Samantha didn't need to look to know what Daniel was thinking. The well was the source of all this. The wish, the price. She stood shakily, her body trembling. "We have to get her back. We can't just..." "We need to think this through," Daniel interrupted, his voice tight with panic. He ran a hand through his hair, his breath coming in short, shallow bursts. "We don't know what we're dealing with here. That thing, it wasn't like anything I've ever seen. It was evil, Sam. Pure evil." Samantha's eyes burned with unshed tears, but she refused to let them fall. "I don't care. We have to save her." Daniel hesitated for a moment, looking back toward the house, as if weighing the decision. But there was no time to waste. Samantha could see it in his eyes, the same urgency that coursed through her veins. They had no choice but to confront whatever the well had unleashed. The wind howled again, louder this time, the cold biting at her skin. The light from the well flickered, casting eerie shadows across the yard. Every part of her screamed to run, to leave this place behind and forget everything she had seen. But Lily was out there, trapped in the nightmare that had begun with a simple wish. "We have to go to the well," Samantha said, her voice steady despite the chaos in her mind. "We need to undo this." Daniel's face twisted with doubt. "You can't be serious. We have no idea what we're dealing with." "I don't care," Samantha snapped. "We don't have a choice." They started toward the well, each step a painful reminder of the darkness that had taken hold of their lives. As they drew closer, Samantha felt an overwhelming sense of dread settle in her chest, tightening with every breath. The well seemed to hum with an unnatural energy, the faint glow flickering like the pulse of a heart. "Please," Samantha whispered, her voice barely audible as she reached the edge of the well. "Please, bring her back." For a moment, nothing happened. The wind died down and the night grew still again. Samantha stood there, her hands trembling, her heart racing. Then, a soft voice, barely a whisper, rose from the depths of the well. "Your wish has been granted," the voice purred, cold and mocking. It was the same voice, the same deep, guttural tone they had heard before. Samantha froze, her blood running cold. "What do you want from us?" The voice laughed, low, cruel. "Your soul, of course." "No," Samantha whispered. She stumbled back, her mind whirling. "We never asked for this. We only wanted her back." The voice echoed, growing louder. "The wish was made, and wishes come with a price." Samantha's pulse quickened, her chest tightening with fear. "Please don't take her. We'll do anything." "Anything?" The voice's tone was filled with cruel amusement. "Anything, you say? Then come to the well. Only then can you undo the wish." Samantha exchanged a look with Daniel. He was pale, his lips pressed together in a thin line, but he didn't say anything. He just nodded once, as if silently agreeing with her resolve. They both knew what they had to do. Without another word, Samantha stepped forward, closer to the well. The ground beneath her seemed to shift, the earth groaning as if protesting her every step. The closer she got, the stronger the pull of the well became. It was as though the very air had thickened, suffocating her with its weight. She could hear faint whispers now, voices that seemed to come from all directions. "Sam," Daniel said quietly, his voice trembling, "we don't know what this will do. You can't just—" "I don't have a choice," Samantha replied. "We need to save Lily." Without waiting for Daniel's response, she reached out and touched the edge of the well. The moment her fingers brushed against the stone, the world seemed to shift. The ground beneath her feet trembled, and the air around her crackled with static. She heard a loud, deafening roar, like the howl of a storm, reaching a crescendo before it abruptly cut off. And then there was silence. Samantha felt something stir beneath her, as if the earth itself were alive and watching her. The hairs on her neck stood on end, and a sharp, cold breeze swept past her, whispering her name. "Samantha!" She turned sharply, but no one was there. "Samantha, come closer." The voice was soft, seductive, coaxing her toward the well. "No," she whispered to herself, shaking her head. "No, I won't fall for it." But as she stood there, her heart pounding, she felt her body moving forward, as if against her will. Her hand trembled as she reached for the edge of the well, her fingers curling around the cold stone. The moment she made contact, she felt a pull, a force stronger than anything she had ever experienced. Suddenly, she was falling. Samantha's stomach lurched as the ground beneath her vanished. For a split second, everything was a blur of motion. Darkness swirling around her, the wind roaring in her ears, her body weightless. Then, with a bone-jarring thud, she landed hard on a cold, damp surface. The world spun around her as she gasped for breath, struggling to regain her senses. Her limbs ached, her head throbbed with pain, but the terror in her chest was all-consuming. She pushed herself up, her hands scrabbling at the dirt beneath her, only to find that it was not earth she touched. It was something different, something ancient. The ground was slick, like polished stone, and it stretched infinitely in all directions. Samantha's heart hammered in her chest as she stood shakily, her eyes scanning the pitch-black surroundings. The air was thick, suffocating, and there was a coldness that clung to her skin, seeping into her bones. The only light came from an eerie, unnatural glow that seemed to emanate from nowhere, faint but constant, like the pulse of a dying star. She was in the well, but this place, it wasn't the same. Felt wrong, like she was standing in a realm that shouldn't exist, a space between worlds. "Daniel," she called, her voice cracking with desperation. "Where are you?" But there was no answer, just the silence of the abyss, the oppressive stillness that swallowed her words whole. Panic surged through her. She staggered forward, her shoes slipping on the slick ground as she tried to find her bearings. It was impossible to tell which way was up, down, or even forward. The dim light did nothing to illuminate the vast emptiness around her. Then, out of the silence, a faint noise reached her ears, a sound that made her blood run cold, a soft, mocking laugh. She froze, her heart skipping a beat as the laughter grew louder, more insistent. It was familiar, a cruel, guttural laugh that sent shivers crawling up her spine. And then, as if the world itself were shifting, she saw him, the figure from earlier, standing in the shadows, just beyond the glow of the eerie light. He was tall, almost impossibly so, his frame obscured by the darkness. His eyes glowed red, like burning embers, his skin pale and stretched tight over sharp features. He was a creature of nightmares, a thing from the deepest, most twisted corners of her mind. His lips curled into a wicked grin as he stepped forward, his movements fluid and unnatural, like he was gliding across the ground. "No," Samantha whispered, taking a step back, her body trembling. "No, please, let me out of here." The figure tilted his head, studying her with an almost amused expression. "You thought you could undo the wish?" he said in a voice that was both cold and hypnotic, like the sound of distant thunder. "The price has already been paid. I didn't mean it. I didn't." Samantha's words faltered as she struggled to find the right ones, the terror choking her words. "We didn't ask for this. We only wanted Lily back. Please, give her back." The figure's grin widened, revealing sharp, jagged teeth that gleamed in the dim light. "You think it's that simple?" he sneered. "Wishes are never without consequences. You didn't simply wish for your daughter to return. You made a bargain, a deal with forces far beyond your understanding." Samantha's mind spun as his words crashed over her. She had never asked for anything more than Lily's return. The voice had promised it. But this was something else. This was far more than she could ever have imagined. "Then what do you want from us?" she demanded, her voice shaking with a mix of defiance and fear. The figure took a step closer, his presence overwhelming. "Your soul, of course, but you still have a choice." "A choice?" Samantha's eyes narrowed in disbelief. "How is there a choice when everything is already lost?" He laughed again, a sound that made the hairs on her neck stand on end. "Because, Samantha, there is always a way to make things right. You have a chance to save your daughter, but it won't come without sacrifice." Samantha's pulse raced. "What do you mean? How do I save her?" The figure extended a long, skeletal hand toward her. "You must give me something of equal value. A life for a life." The words hung in the air like a heavy fog, settling over Samantha's chest with suffocating weight. Her mind reeled, unable to comprehend what he was saying. A life for a life. What could he possibly want? "Who?" Samantha whispered, her voice barely audible. "Who do you want me to sacrifice?" The figure's eyes gleamed with dark amusement. "Only you can choose. But remember, time is running out. The longer you wait, the worse it will get." Samantha's heart pounded in her ears as her mind raced. A life for a life. What could she possibly give up to save Lily? The answer was unthinkable. No, I won't do it," she said, her voice trembling with fear and resolve. "I won't make that choice." The figure's expression darkened, the amusement vanishing as quickly as it had come. "Then your daughter remains here, trapped in the abyss. Forever." Samantha's world collapsed around her. Her daughter's face flashed in her mind, her innocent smile, her laughter. She couldn't lose her. Not like this. She couldn't stand the thought of Lily being trapped forever in this twisted, nightmarish place. But the cost, the price, I will save her, Samantha whispered, a tear slipping down her cheek. I will do whatever it takes. The figure smiled again, this time with a terrible finality. Very well, your choice has been made. Before Samantha could react, the ground beneath her feet began to shake violently. The darkness seemed to deepen, and the air grew thick with an otherworldly pressure. A loud, screeching sound filled her ears, like the world itself was tearing apart. And then, everything went black. Samantha's eyes fluttered open, her vision blurred and her head pounding. She tried to sit up, but the world spun around her, and she collapsed back onto the cold, smooth surface beneath her. The air was thick with an unnatural stillness, and the oppressive darkness seemed to press in from all sides. The pulse of the faint light from earlier had dimmed even further, now reduced to a mere flicker in the distance. Her heart raced as the memories of the last moments flooded back. Falling, the figure, the terrible choice she had made, the price, a life for a life. Her breath caught in her throat. Had she truly agreed to it? Had she really sacrificed herself in exchange for Lily's freedom? No, she couldn't have. She wouldn't have. But as she lay there in the suffocating silence, the feeling of dread gnawed at her insides, a cold certainty that the world had changed forever. Samantha slowly pushed herself up, her limbs weak and unsteady. Her eyes scanned the darkness, trying to find any sign of life, of hope. But there was nothing, just the crushing emptiness that stretched on for what felt like eternity. Lily? Samantha called, her voice hoarse and desperate. But the sound of her own voice only seemed to amplify the hollow silence that surrounded her. There was no answer. A chill crept down her spine as she tried to steady herself. She needed to find her daughter. She had to. Taking a deep breath, Samantha forced herself to her feet. The ground beneath her felt uneven, like she was walking on a surface that shifted with every step. She stumbled forward, her senses on high alert, every instinct screaming that she was being watched, that something was following her. Her pulse quickened as the distant flicker of light grew stronger, beckoning her forward. She had no choice but to move toward it. It was the only thing she could cling to, the only hope left in this nightmare. The darkness seemed to part as she drew closer, the light revealing a stone pathway that twisted and turned in unnatural angles, leading deeper into the abyss. Samantha followed the path, her footsteps echoing against the cold, smooth stones beneath her. The air was thick with a foul scent, like decay, and each breath felt like it would suffocate her. She rounded a corner, and there, at the end of the path, she saw it. The well. But this was not the well she had fallen into. This was something far more sinister, far older. Its stones were cracked and covered in strange symbols, symbols that seemed to writhe and shift when she looked away, as if they were alive. The glow emanated from the well, casting eerie shadows that danced around the edges of the path. But it wasn't just the well that drew her in. It was the figure standing next to it. A tall, cloaked figure, its face hidden in shadow, watching her with eyes that burned like fire. Samantha froze, her heart hammering in her chest as she recognized the figure. It was him, the one from before, the one who had made the deal, the one who had offered her the price. You, Samantha whispered, her voice trembling. You said we had a choice. What is this? Where is my daughter? The figure didn't move, its presence heavy in the air. For a moment, there was only silence, as if the very world around them was holding its breath. The choice was always yours, Samantha, the figure said, its voice low and echoing in the vast emptiness. But now the time has come to pay the price. I don't care about the price, Samantha spat, her voice shaking with fury and fear. "I want my daughter back. You promised." The figure's head tilted slightly, a mocking smile playing at the corners of its lips. "Did I promise? Or did you simply assume?" Samantha's stomach churned. She had never asked for this, never thought she would be forced to make such a terrible choice. She had only wanted Lily back, nothing more. But now, everything seemed to be slipping through her fingers like sand. "What do you want from me?" Samantha demanded, taking a step forward, her voice desperate. "I've given you everything. What else is there?" The figure's smile widened, showing teeth that gleamed in the dim light. "You've given nothing, Samantha. You've only delayed the inevitable. The price must be paid." A chill ran through Samantha as she stepped closer to the well. She could feel the air grow colder, the ground beneath her feet growing slick with something more than just the damp earth. It was as if the very well itself was alive, its presence pressing in on her. "You can't keep her," Samantha said, her voice steadying as she forced herself to look the figure in the eye. "She's my daughter. I'll do whatever it takes to get her back." "You can't have her." The figure's laugh was soft and cruel. "You misunderstand, Samantha. Your daughter is already here." Samantha's heart stopped. Her breath caught in her throat as the figure extended its hand toward the well, and the shadows around it seemed to twist and writhe in response. From within the well, a faint cry echoed, a sound that made Samantha's blood run cold. It was Lily's voice. She could hear her, distant and desperate, calling out for her. "Lily!" Samantha screamed, her voice breaking as she took another step forward. "Lily, I'm coming. Hold on." The figure's eyes flashed with dark amusement. "You think you can save her?" it asked, its voice dripping with mockery. "You've already made your choice. There's no turning back now." Samantha's heart raced as she reached the edge of the well. The glow from within pulsed, growing brighter with every passing second, and she could hear Lily's voice more clearly now, pleading, calling her name. "Nam, help me!" Lily cried out. "No!" Samantha shouted, her hands gripping the edge of the well. "I won't lose you. I won't let you go." The figure stepped closer, its presence overwhelming. "You have a choice, Samantha. You can step into the well and join her, or you can remain here and watch as she fades away. The price is always the same." Samantha's eyes filled with tears, but her resolve remained firm. She could feel Lily's presence, feel the pull of the well, and she knew she had no choice. She couldn't lose her daughter. Not like this. Without another word, Samantha stepped forward, falling into the darkness below. Samantha's body felt weightless as she fell, the air around her rushing by in a deafening roar. The darkness enveloped her, and for a moment, it felt as though time itself had stopped. The feeling of falling, of spiraling deeper and deeper into the abyss, was unlike anything she had ever experienced. Her stomach churned, and her chest tightened as if gravity had no hold on her at all. But then, just as she thought she would be swallowed by the darkness forever, the fall abruptly stopped. Samantha gasped for air, her body slamming into something solid beneath her. Her hands scraped against rough stone as she struggled to find her bearings. But the world around her was still dark. She could barely make out the faintest outlines of shapes, shadows that shifted and twisted with every blink. Samantha pushed herself up, her limbs aching from the fall. Her heart pounded in her chest, the sound deafening in the silence. She took a shaky step forward, the ground beneath her uneven and slick with moisture. Every instinct screamed at her to turn back, but there was no going back now. Lily needed her. She had to find her daughter. A cold wind swept through the cavernous space, sending a chill down Samantha's spine. The air was thick with a musty, damp smell, like the inside of an old, forgotten tomb. The darkness around her felt alive, pressing in from all sides, and she shivered despite herself. "Lily!" Samantha called out, her voice echoing through the empty space. The sound bounced off the walls and faded into nothingness. No answer. She swallowed hard and took another step forward, the faint sound of dripping water the only sound that broke the silence. The walls of the cavern were slick with moss, and she had to be careful not to slip. Her mind raced with questions. What was this place? Was it some kind of hell? A dream? Or had she truly crossed into another world entirely? Her eyes darted around, searching for any sign of her daughter. She thought she saw a flicker of movement in the shadows, something that resembled a figure standing at the far end of the cavern. Her heart skipped a beat, and without thinking, she moved toward it. "Lily," she whispered, her voice trembling. Her footsteps echoed louder now, the silence around her pressing in even more. The figure in the distance didn't move. It stood there, perfectly still, as if waiting for her. Samantha's mind raced. Could it be Lily? Was she standing there, just out of reach? She quickened her pace, her hope growing with every step, but the figure remained motionless. The closer she got, the more she could feel something was wrong. The air grew colder, and a sense of foreboding wrapped itself around her like a suffocating cloak. Suddenly, the figure turned. Samantha's heart skipped a beat as she came face to face with what could only be described as a shadow. It wasn't a person, but a dark, swirling mass of darkness, a shape that seemed to shift and warp with every movement. "No!" Samantha gasped, stepping back, her breath catching in her throat. "Where is she?" The shadow didn't respond. It simply reached out toward her with elongated, tendril-like arms, the air crackling with an unnatural energy. Without thinking, Samantha turned and ran. Her heart pounded in her chest as she sprinted through the dark cavern, her feet stumbling over the uneven ground. The shadow was right behind her now, its presence growing stronger with every passing second. The space around her seemed to distort, bending and warping as if the very walls were closing in. Her legs burned with exhaustion, but she couldn't stop. She had to keep moving, had to find Lily. She wouldn't leave her behind. The sound of footsteps echoed behind her, growing louder, closer. Samantha's pulse quickened, and she risked a glance over her shoulder. The shadow was gaining on her, its tendrils reaching out toward her, its form becoming more defined, more solid with each step. "Lily!" she screamed, her voice breaking with desperation. "Where are you? Please, help me!" The air around her crackled with energy, and suddenly, a voice, soft, cold, and haunting, whispered in her ear. "You can't run from me, Samantha." Samantha froze, her blood running cold at the sound of the voice. She didn't recognize it, but she could feel the malevolence dripping from every syllable. The shadow was getting closer now, so close she could feel its chill brushing against her skin. With a burst of adrenaline, Samantha pushed herself forward, her hands trembling as she reached out for anything that could help her escape. She wasn't sure what she was looking for, but she couldn't stop. Not now. Ahead, she saw a faint light flickering in the distance. It was dim, but it was something. A way out. She ran toward it, praying that it was real, praying that it was the way to Lily. But the closer she got, the more the light seemed to fade. It flickered, like a dying flame, and Samantha's heart sank as she realized it was just an illusion. "No!" she cried out, stumbling to a halt. "Please!" But then, as if the darkness itself had heard her plea, the light grew brighter, more intense. And in the center of the light, she saw her. Lily, her daughter, stood there, bathed in the warm golden glow, her face pale but calm. She looked different. Her eyes were distant, as though she were in a trance, and her skin had a ghostly hue. "Samantha." Lily's voice was faint, as if coming from far away. "I'm here, Lily." Samantha rushed toward her, her heart leaping in her chest. But as she neared, something stopped her. An invisible force, like a wall of air, held her back. "Lily, what's happening?" Samantha cried, her hands reaching out in desperation. "I'm here. I'm not leaving you." Lily's gaze shifted, her eyes locking onto Samantha's with a look that was both familiar and strange. "I'm not the one you need to save, Mom," Lily said softly, her voice echoing strangely in the air. "It's you." Samantha's heart stopped, her breath hitching. "What do you mean? What's happening to you?" Lily smiled faintly, her expression distant. "You've already made the sacrifice. You don't have to save me, Mom. Already gone." "No!" Samantha shouted, her voice breaking. "I'll get you out of here. I'll find a way." But Lily only shook her head, her smile fading as the light around her began to dim. "Goodbye, Mom." With those final words, Lily disappeared into the darkness, her form dissolving into the shadows as though she had never been there at all. Samantha stood frozen, her mind reeling. What had just happened? Had she lost her daughter forever? Or was this part of the price she had paid? The darkness closed in around her once again, and as the well's power pulsed in the distance, she understood. There was no escape now. Samantha stood in the suffocating darkness, her thoughts swirling like a storm inside her mind. She had failed her daughter. Lily was gone, vanished into the shadows, just when she thought she had found a way to save her. The cavern around her felt even colder now, the walls pressing in as though the very earth itself was closing around her. Her heart was heavy with grief, her breath shallow. The air was thick with a suffocating weight, and every sound she made seemed to echo back in a mocking tone, reminding her that there was no escape. The coldness of the place seeped into her bones, and she could feel the well's power, its dark energy pulsing beneath the surface, like a heartbeat that was not her own. She closed her eyes, trying to steady herself, but the image of Lily, fading into the darkness, haunted her. Her daughter had said that she was already gone, that Samantha had made the sacrifice. But what did that mean? What was the price of the well? "Lily," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Please, where are you?" But the cavern gave no answer, its silence oppressive. She had come so far, fought so hard, and yet the well had taken what she loved most, just as it had promised. The power of the well was far stronger than she had anticipated, and now, in the face of that power, she felt small and helpless. But there was no time to grieve. There was something else here, something waiting in the shadows. Samantha could feel it, a presence that was lurking, observing her every move. Her instincts screamed at her to run, to escape before it was too late. But where would she go? How could she leave when Lily's spirit was still trapped in this place, when the well's curse had taken hold of her so completely? "Mom!" The whisper came from nowhere and everywhere all at once, and Samantha froze. It was Lily's voice, faint, like a distant memory, but unmistakable. "Lily?" Samantha called out, her voice breaking. "Is that you?" The air shifted, and in the blink of an eye, the darkness seemed to lift, just enough for her to see the faint outline of something ahead. The figure. At first, it was indistinct, a blur in the shadows, but as it came closer, Samantha's heart skipped a beat. It was Lily, but something was wrong. Her daughter was standing there, her once bright eyes hollow and dark, her skin pale, almost translucent. She looked different, twisted, as if the darkness had claimed her, changing her into something unrecognizable. "No," "This can't be you," Samantha whispered, her throat tight. "Lily, what happened? What have they done to you?" Lily's lips parted in a slow, painful smile. Her voice was strained, distant. "It's not too late, Mom. You still have time to stop it." Samantha's heart pounded in her chest as she took a step forward, reaching out for her daughter. "Stop what? What do you mean?" "The well," Lily said, her voice almost drowned out by the eerie sound of whispers that filled the air. "It's not finished yet. There's one more part of the curse. You can't escape it, not unless you—" The words faltered, as if Lily was fighting to speak, struggling against something far greater than her. The figure that was once Lily started to flicker, her image warping in and out of focus like a fading photograph. "Lily, no!" Samantha cried out, running toward her daughter. "I'm here. Please, come back." But as she reached out, the figure shattered, dissolving into a cloud of mist that disappeared into the darkness. Samantha fell to her knees, her hands shaking. She could still feel the presence of Lily in the air, her essence lingering, but it was fleeting. The whispers grew louder now, swirling around her like a storm. The air was thick with an overwhelming sense of malevolence, and she knew, deep in her gut, that this was only the beginning. The well's power had claimed her daughter, and now it was coming for her. Suddenly, a voice, dark and ominous, boomed from somewhere deep within the cavern. "You failed, Samantha." The voice was unmistakable. It was the voice of the well itself, a force older and darker than anything Samantha had ever imagined. It pulsed with ancient power, as though it had been waiting for this moment for centuries. "No!" Samantha shouted, her fists clenched. "I'm not going to let you take everything from me." The voice chuckled, low and cold. "You've already given everything, Samantha. Your daughter, your soul. The price has been paid." Samantha's blood ran cold as the ground beneath her trembled. The walls of the cavern began to shift, the darkness growing deeper, more oppressive. It was as if the very cavern itself was alive, its walls closing in on her. The well was not just a curse. It was a living, breathing entity, feeding on her grief, her loss, her fear. And it was coming for her now, ready to claim her as it had claimed Lily. But Samantha refused to give in. She couldn't. She had already lost so much, but she wasn't going to lose herself. Not now. "No," Samantha said, her voice trembling but defiant. "I will not let you win. I'll find a way to stop this. I'll destroy the well if I have to." The cavern seemed to laugh, a hollow, mocking sound that filled every inch of the space. The walls seemed to close in tighter, the darkness swallowing her whole. "Do you think you can escape your fate, Samantha?" the voice asked, its tone dark and knowing. "You are already bound to the well. There is no escape. You will never leave this place." Samantha's mind raced. The well had taken Lily, but could she still save her? Could she undo the damage the well had caused? There had to be a way. She stood tall, her body trembling with fear, but her resolve unwavering. "I don't care what it takes," she muttered. "I'll fight until the very end." With a final, defiant breath, she turned away from the growing darkness and began to move deeper into the cavern, her every step heavy with the weight of the curse. She didn't know what lay ahead, but she would find a way to break the well's hold. For Lily, for herself, and for every soul that the well had claimed. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth, the stone walls of the cavern closing in around Samantha as she moved deeper into the darkness. The whispers that had once surrounded her now felt like a constant presence, creeping closer with every step. Her pulse hammered in her ears, and her breath came in quick, shallow gasps. But she didn't stop. Not this time. She had come too far. The well, the source of all this terror, was waiting, its power alive, pulsating beneath the surface of the earth, reaching out with tendrils of malevolent energy. Samantha had to destroy it. She had to undo the curse and save her daughter, even if it meant sacrificing herself. As she walked, her mind flashed back to the moments when the well had first shown itself to her, how it had promised her the world, how it had offered her a way to make everything right again, and then how it had turned on her, twisting every wish into a nightmare. The price had been too high, and now Lily, the one person she loved most in the world, was lost to it. But there was still hope, wasn't there? She had seen Lily's face, heard her voice. The connection between them wasn't gone. Couldn't be. There had to be a way to reverse what had happened. A way to end the curse. The walls of the cavern stretched endlessly before her, the path winding downward into the deepest shadows. She could feel the weight of the darkness pressing down, the ground beneath her trembling as though the cavern itself was alive, waiting for her to make a choice. It was as if the well was aware of her every step, watching, waiting for her to finally come to the end. Ahead, she saw it. The well. It was larger than she had imagined, towering over her like a dark, ancient beast. The stone walls surrounding it were cracked and weathered, veins of dark energy coursing through the cracks like the blood of some forgotten creature. The air around it was thick with a sense of dread, the whispers louder now, growing more frantic. Samantha's heart raced in her chest as she approached the edge. She could feel the pull of the well, its power reaching out to claim her. It beckoned to her, offering her the same twisted promise it had given before, the chance to undo the curse, to bring Lily back. But at what cost? A figure emerged from the shadows, standing at the edge of the well. It was Lily, or at least it looked like her, but there was something wrong. Her eyes were hollow, her skin ashen, and her once beautiful face was twisted in pain, a silent scream frozen on her lips. "Mom!" Lily's voice echoed through the cavern, distant and broken. "You don't understand. You can't stop it." Samantha's throat tightened. "Lily, please, I'm here. I'll save you. I won't let this happen." Lily shook her head, her movements jerky and unnatural. "You can't save me, Mom. You can't save anyone. The well is too powerful." Samantha reached out, her fingers trembling, but the space between them seemed to grow larger, the shadows pulling Lily away. "No, I won't accept that. You're my daughter. I can't just give up on you." "You don't have a choice," Lily whispered, her voice barely audible. "You've already made your choice." The darkness around them thickened, swirling like a storm, and Samantha felt the ground shift beneath her feet. The well's energy intensified, flooding the cavern with a sickening pressure. It was as though the very air was trying to suffocate her, to drag her down into the abyss. Suddenly, the well's power surged, and Samantha staggered backward, her body threatening to give way under the weight of it. She gasped for air, struggling to stay on her feet as the cavern seemed to collapse around her. The whispers grew louder, frantic, pleading with her to turn away, to abandon her quest. But she couldn't stop. She couldn't. Lily's face was fading now, the figure flickering like a dying candle, and Samantha knew, deep down, that she was running out of time. If she didn't act soon, if she didn't make the final choice, she would lose her daughter forever. The well's power was overwhelming, but Samantha's resolve was stronger. She couldn't let fear rule her. She couldn't let it take everything from her. Not again. With a deep breath, Samantha stepped forward, closer to the well's edge. The shadows around her twisted and writhed, but she ignored them. She had come here for one purpose, to destroy it. And destroy it she would. The well's energy surged again, and this time, Samantha didn't flinch. She reached into the darkness, her hands trembling but steady as she placed them on the cold stone of the well. The surface was slick with something, but she didn't care. She had to act. The whispers in her ears grew louder, becoming a cacophony of voices. They tried to drown her, to pull her down into the darkness, but she pushed through them, focusing on her goal. "I will end this," she whispered through clenched teeth. "I will stop you." The ground beneath her feet shook violently as the well responded to her defiance, but Samantha held firm. She focused on the love she had for Lily, on the years they had spent together. She focused on the hope that she could still save her, still make things right. And then, with a final, desperate cry, she slammed her hands down on the stone. The well screamed in fury, a high-pitched wail that reverberated through the cavern. The darkness around her seemed to recoil, and the very earth beneath her feet trembled as the energy of the well fought to keep its hold. But Samantha did not falter. She held on, her mind filled with the faces of everyone she had lost, of the family she had tried to protect. She would not let the well win. Not again. With one final, explosive surge, the stone cracked beneath her hands, and the darkness that had consumed the cavern began to recede. The air cleared, and the oppressive weight lifted from her chest. For a moment, everything was still, and then, slowly, Lily's face appeared before her, her features soft and peaceful, no longer twisted in pain. Her eyes were clear, her smile gentle. "Mom, you did it," Lily said, her voice full of warmth. "You saved me." Samantha's heart swelled with relief as she reached out for her daughter. "Lily, I thought I lost you." "I was never truly gone, Mom," Lily replied. "The well could only take me for a time. But you never gave up on me. You never stopped fighting. And because of that, we're free." Samantha pulled Lily into her arms, feeling the weight of the years they had lost melt away. The cavern around them was now silent, the shadows gone. The well, once a source of darkness and terror, had been destroyed, its power shattered. The curse was broken. They were free. Samantha held her daughter close, knowing that the journey they had been on had finally come to an end. And though the scars of their experience would remain, they would heal together, stronger than before. And as the first rays of dawn broke through the cavern's entrance, Samantha and Lily walked out into the light, leaving the darkness and the well behind them.